Good afternoon and welcome to episode of the AddDrop Podcast. I'm your host, Terrence Biggs. It is Wednesday. It is time to get smarter. You know him, you love him. He is the pride and joy of El Segundo, California. Also, Cal State Northridge's favorite son, and still on top of all that, the managing editor of Last Word on College Football, Tony Siracusa. What's going on, Tone?
T Biggs, how are you, sir?
All
Hey,
always good.
there's a baseball guy. There's a name you may or may not know, may require a little bit of prompting. Uh, Major league umpire for a good 19, 20 years, Darrell Cousins.
Yes. Oh,
Um, Darrell
yes.
Cousins. Now, as we and I bring this full circle to speak well of the El Segundo Eagles. Darrell Cousins is in the El Segundo High School Hall of Fame because that's where he went to school.
Are you
He went
serious?
to, I am. Darrell Cousins is a graduate of El Segundo High School. His younger brother, Craig, was a teacher at El Segundo High and the assistant baseball coach under legend John Stevenson. Oh goodness, I'm going to say at least 20 years. And Craig is also in the High School Hall of Fame, also for his longevity as the assistant baseball coach. But Darrell Cousins is in there, legendary Major League Baseball umpire. He is in the El Segundo Eagles Hall of Fame.
They're just saving a spot for you. In all seriousness, when that when that time comes, will you be shocked or will you be like something that you kind of thought would happen or felt that would happen?
I'm gonna ask how much money you sent them personally for it to happen is gonna be my answer. I'm gonna say Terry Biggs sent you some cash, didn't he? How much? How much did it take?
Well, think about it. You're a distinguished alum who enjoys a very long career in this field. Like it is a lot. I mean, it
I
is
appreciate that.
quite the career.
I appreciate that. I'm gonna stun you for 1 second.
Okay.
1 second. This is sorry, I didn't plan well. I'm going to duck off camera for about 5 seconds because I have to reach over and grab something to
Okay.
show you in the audience something.
Okay.
So hang in for, I know this is weird. I know this wasn't part of the plan, but I'm asking to hang in there because I've got to reach over to this bookshelf and grab something. And now there we go. Hope that wasn't too horribly awkward. But trust me, there will be a purpose to it because we had talked about something last week and try and hold this up to the camera so it's not too weird. When we were talking about Lee Corso, and I was talking about something that I had from January 1999, New Year's Day. There is a let's see if I can do that right, very pregnant Mitzi with Chris Fowler
Dollar.
as we were there for the Rose Bowl, the UCLA versus Wisconsin Rose Bowl. She was 2 months away from giving birth to our daughter. And so when we were talking about ESPN and game day and whatnot, and I had mentioned it, and I had meant to get it out before the show and totally forgot. But also, as I'm taking this show way, way off the rails here, and I apologize. Um, but there was something else in here that I wanted to show you. And oh, here it is. See if I can pull it out of here. See if excuse me. You see, let's see, can we see that? We can. That would be the autograph of one Tom Landry.
1977.
Exactly. And I have a bunch of others from the Cowboys
Oh,
from
okay,
that year.
because
I've
they used
got
to practice,
I've
right?
got
Out
Tony
in
Dorsett. I've got Jethro Pugh. I've got Dwight Lewis, Mel Renfro, Tony Hill. Got quite a few from the Cowboys because they used to practice at Cal Lutheran, which is where I went to John Wooden basketball camp
that's
in
cool.
that same year. So yeah, so I've got a bunch of the Cowboys from back then. Anyway, just thought I would throw that in there.
Now you mentioned the missus being
Yes.
being from South Carolina.
Yes.
Is she particular about her barbecue sauce? Is she a fan of the South Carolina
Oh,
style?
yes, she is. She is. We part ways on that.
It's good
I
though.
it's okay. It's a little too vinegary, for me. She loves that on the pulled pork. I like the dark, deep red sauce to go with my barbecue. That's my preference. It's almost really a little bit more Texas style than anything else. That's my preference.
It is so good. Now, before we kind of get into the games, George Raveling, former USC, former Iowa, former Washington State head coach, played ball at Villanova,
Sure.
was an assistant under Bobby Knight at the '84 Olympics, passed away at
Hmm.
the age of 88. Do you
Hmm.
have a particular memory of Coach Raveling?
It's interesting. Ravs was a great coach. Coached at Washington State and then went down to USC and eventually over to Iowa. And I have this thing that I tell our writers, people are complex. Nobody is ever just one thing. And I think that that's probably never more so the case that you see it when someone dies. And I'm just throwing out random samples of recent past. Hulk Hogan was not one thing. I know the wrestling community looked at him one way, but I also remember those recordings of dropping the horrible racist slanders. Um, he is both of those things. Um, when Mike Leach passed, there was a lot of love for Leach, and I don't begrudge that. I absolutely understand that. Um, but I also remember the completely misogynist comments he made about players' girlfriends and things like that, which were really, unnecessary and unfortunate. So, point being, nobody is ever just one thing. And that's true with Raveling. Couple quick pieces about Raveling. Um, when he went to USC, he wanted an immediate commitment from everybody on that team that they were staying. Now they'd been recruited by Stan Morrison, and some weren't happy with the change. And there were a couple of recruits that wanted the time to go back home, talk to their family, talk to their people, and Raveling was not okay with it. They left for 3 days to go talk to their family, and when they got back, they found out he revoked their scholarships. It was really unfortunate because that's just not the way you do things, man. It's not the way you treat 18, 19-year-old kids. Now, for anyone who doesn't know who I'm talking about, I'm going to say that Hank Gathers and Bo Kimball did all right at Loyola Marymount, their next home. But that's just not the way you treat people. Um, he played a huge role, Raveling did, as the assistant coach on the '84 Olympic basketball team. I will say the gold medal game, I was at the gold medal game that year. It was the only break I got. I worked for the LA Olympic Committee in '84. Uh, Someone I knew really well was given a management position, and they brought me along as the assistant venue press chief for boxing. Um, I saw 350 boxing matches over 2 weeks. It was brutal. And during the day, I worked both shifts of every day, and I wanted to. I wanted as much as they would give me. During the day, I worked as one of the um, interview coordinators, TV interview coordinators, which basically meant I sat ringside with Howard Cosell and his people. And when the Americans were done fighting, I'd run up in the ring, grab them, give them the headset, and Cosell was ready to talk to them. Loved working with Howard Cosell. Man, just one of the most generous people you could ever imagine. The rest of the time, which most of the time, was spent in the interview room, the press room, which after every single fight, there was the interview room. And we were supposed to make sure there were translators there for the different languages so that the media could be there. But I'm sitting there, the only person in control of the room, and there's a fight between someone from the Ivory Coast and someone from Turkey. And the only media people there are one person from their home country each. And I'm like, do you guys need a translator? You want to just come up to the table? It's fine. You don't have to sit in your seats, whatever. But that was an amazing boxing team as well that year. Pernell Whitaker, Meldrick Taylor, Mark Breland, guys like that. Anyway, I digress. The one night we had off, someone got me tickets for the gold medal basketball game that Raveling was the assistant coach on. You remember that team, right? Patrick
Yes.
Ewing, Jordan,
Joe Klein.
Chris Mullen, Joe Klein, Sam Perkins, Wayman Tisdale, Leon Wood. I mean, up until we started putting pros in there, that was the best U.S. team ever.
Ever.
Uh, and he played a critical role with that because Bobby Knight was the head coach. And there were a lot of clashes between players and Bobby Knight because that's just who Knight was. And Raveling was the intermediary. But there's also something else that a lot of people don't know about Raveling. And I used to hear it regularly because he would talk about it with his media things in LA if someone would ask him. Presumably, he still had it up until the day he died this week. But there was another side of George Raveling. George Raveling was a very active part of the civil rights movement in the
Yep.
1960s. Marched with Dr. King quite a bit. George Raveling was at the March on Washington. He was part of a security team, personal security team for Dr. King on stage. And here's the twist. Dr. King was done and turned around to go leave the stage. He left his speech sitting on the podium. Raveling grabbed it and said, Dr. King, here's your speech. Dr. King said, I don't need it. Just keep it. George Raveling, his entire adult life, had the only final copy of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. I mean, wow. There's a side of George Raveling that was not well known. People talk about his role in getting Jordan to sign with Nike and whatever. The whole Nike thing with Jordan and whatever is way overblown. Sonny Vaccaro's role got turned into a movie that was so fictitious. It was absurd. But George Raveling, all of these years, had the fine, and he offered it back to the family. The family was like, Dad gave it to you. Keep it. You know,
He,
it's
he
pretty amazing to think of that. Just
it is.
to be, he used to do radio interviews in LA and he would talk about that day and say, yeah, I still have it.
He had loaned it to his alma mater, which is
Yep.
Villanova,
Yep.
for a long-term loan. Now it's in the National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And it's there on loan, but
Yep.
obviously now that he's gone, I'm sure he made provisions that they can keep it or that someone else is in charge of how that works. But yeah, I mean, that's amazing to think about. I mean, just go through life sitting there thinking, I got Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech.
Coach Raveling also, at the end of his USC tenure, he recruited a player that in kind of 90s urban basketball lore was supposed to be the next big thing, Harold Miner,
Yep.
Baby
Baby
Jordan.
Jordan. Yep.
And he had a great tournament game. And it just, that's when, just kind of saw, for fans on the East Coast like me, oh, there's USC basketball. And just, it was just, and then he kept active through being like a commentator. And
Hmm.
there are a bunch of clips. There are tons of, he had a couple of segments. He had his own YouTube channel.
Yep.
This week I flipped through it. And he's sitting down with John Calipari, Nolan Richardson, all these coaches who, he was friendly with. And it, it talks about X's and O's, but it kind of talks about the actual human condition. All these videos are like 10 years old, but you could see how much he loved the game.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
From everything I've read, just a really good man.
I only met him once, so I'm not going to proclaim to have any great insights into him or anything, but a very gracious man the one time I did meet him.
Exactly. Now as we turn towards college football, I guess
Yeah.
we will give a couple words about what we watched on Monday night. As someone who follows North Carolina football, I knew it was coming. It's funny, you know it's coming, and yet it still bothers you when you see it.
Hmm.
And North Carolina, they were never going to be the most talented team in ACC, but this might be one of their
No.
worst incarnations in a long time.
Well, look, I'm going to stick with in the theme of my Sunday column of overreaction Sunday. I'm going to keep it going to Monday. I still say we don't know. We still don't know what North Carolina is. I think that you look at TCU, and TCU is a very good team, and Hoover's a very good quarterback. I laughed when you go to social media and North Carolina scores that touchdown on a very impressive first drive. And I see Skip Bayless talking about how that's a championship level offense. And I see Colin Cowherd talking about North Carolina in the college football playoffs. You're idiots. This is why games are 4 quarters long. This is why context matters. Nothing in microcosm is true. It is always to be taken within context because they look like idiots just an hour later when the game was a blowout. Um, I don't know if you saw the pictures of Bill Belichick, or if you saw Bill Belichick's post-game press conference.
Hmm.
What the hell was that with the balloons? I mean, I think nobody ever owned up to it. I think what happened is they'd had like a party or reception in that room before,
Hmm.
and they just didn't take all the decor down. That was one of the stupidest looking post-game press conferences ever, with all the Carolina blue balloons and all of this. I mean, what in goodness gracious name was that? Look, it can be a decent team. I think I picked him. I don't have my ballot, but I think I picked him to finish sixth or seventh in the conference. And that's good enough to get a bowl bid somewhere. You're not going to the playoff. You're not getting anywhere near it. You're not getting anywhere near the conference championship race. But you get a bowl bid and be all right. And then, it'll be cleaned up by whoever whoever is the coach next year.
Yeah, I think this will be a one and done because you could tell
Sure.
that it's just I don't think he's equipped for it. You just could if body language matters and just it was just weird to watch. And the exchange with he and his girlfriend after the game where she walks up to him and says something, looks rather friendly. He snaps at her and she just walks on like down the sideline, just and he walks across the field.
Yeah, that's why you don't date people you work with,
No,
or take people you're dating and give them jobs. It
exactly.
never works well. Never.
Yeah, looking back at it, the split between the AD and the board of
Yeah.
trustees,
Yeah.
Bubba Cunningham's looking really smart right now.
Bubba Cunningham would like the sleeves back on his suit that he cut up for that introductory press conference. He's like, wow, that was a perfectly good suit. And the sleeves are all cut off. Yeah, look, there's a reason he's leaving at the end
Yeah.
of the academic year. He didn't want any part of this to begin with.
Nope.
You know, and you see why. It's a circus that has the potential to not live up to the hype.
Exactly. They had an interview with Roy Cooper, and he said that being an an alum of North Carolina, he's like he thinks, and he's heard other people repeat this. The reason why they brought on Bill Belichick is to obscure the fact that basketball team is just incompetent at this point.
I think that's an overly simplistic way of looking at it. I think they wanted the big splash. I think they wanted the headlines. I think they wanted all this notoriety and all this attention. Now, was that attention an effort to overshadow what's going wrong with the basketball program. That may be completely possible. But it was really first and foremost about, the headlines.
I agree. I think that they play Richmond next week and they go to
Mhm.
it's UCF before they invite up Clemson, and Clemson is going to be in a mood.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, Clemson, look, I'm gonna sit here and own it. Man, I got a lot wrong last week on
Same.
your show. I missed huge on the Clemson game. I missed on the Syracuse Tennessee game. Turns out Joey Aguilar can play football. Um, I missed on the Florida State game. Certainly the Florida State Alabama game. I missed on the Miami Notre Dame game. So. Man, that took a beating in week one, which is why I called Sunday's column overreaction. We're going to try not to overreact because it's week one. We sit here all summer and pontificate like we're so brilliant. And then it turns out in week one, we find out we're less brilliant than we thought. And that's the way it goes. We're here for the long haul.
Exactly. In our first game, we have Baylor and SMU. To me,
Yeah.
I watched them play Auburn. Sawyer Robertson looked good. He
Mhm.
looked good. Their run defense is bad. Like there was
Yes.
early, it was shaky, but they're
Yes.
playing an SMU team that Kevin Jennings, they in the offense, they don't seem like they want to run because they threw the ball a lot, a ton.
They did.
So I'm wondering if there's going to be Rhett Lashlee's going to try to change up and attack a run defense that is porous.
Well, I think you're right in that Sawyer Robertson, he had a good game, even in the loss. He was 27 of 48, had a little bit more than 400 yards and three touchdowns, and he looked good. Really played mistake-free ball. The offense for Baylor was not the issue, as you say. The defense was. The run defense was terrible. Um, the when you are Rhett Lashley in SMU, you didn't have to throw everything out there. You played East Texas, whatever, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it was only 17-3 at halftime, but there was no thought that East Texas A&M was in the game. And so you could kind of hold things back. I mean, SMU had what, 400 yards total offense, um, 260 passing, like you said, only 140 yards on the ground. A good chunk of that being Kevin Jennings himself, because he's a good running quarterback. And Jennings was 22 of 30 for that passing yardage. Um, the the running game used three different players, and I think you're not going to see that against Baylor because you're now ready. I think if you're Lashley, you're almost hiding a little bit of your game plan, your offense, because you can. Um, it's a home game for SMU, and I think that matters. I know people don't think SMU has a home field advantage, um, but they've won 15 out of their last 16 games at home. So they do well there. I think this is going to be a high scoring game. I think, Baylor's offense looks good. Even in the loss, SMU's offense can put up a lot of yards and a lot of points. Again, it's at Gerald J. Ford Stadium, by the way, not named after the former president, Gerald R. Ford. This is Gerald J. Ford, a major donor in SMU lore. Um, I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think SMU has a little bit more in the weapons department that they didn't show us yet. So I think they probably pull this out at home.
I agree. I think SMU, it'll be one of those old school Western Athletic Conference games where it's like a
Right. Yes. Yes.
45-41 type of shootout.
Right. Whoever has the ball last winds up pulling it out. Yeah, I agree.
And our next one, we have Oklahoma State and Oregon. And I think this might be one of the most interesting as far as troubled Oklahoma State teams we've seen in a very long time. They are, I mean, when you think of Oklahoma State, even though their head coach is a former quarterback, you think of guys like Ollie Gordon, Chuba Hubbard, Justice
Mhm.
Hill,
Mhm.
Tatum Bell, way, way, way back, and
Right.
they have a good run game. Now it just they seem early on that Mike Gundy's going to put all of his eggs into Flores, the quarterback's into his basket.
Well, I mean, they lost their starting quarterback. Flores is the backup, but they don't have any choice. Hedgney he made a few good plays in the opening game, but he's got a foot injury, and I don't know if it's broken. I didn't see the latest update, but I know he's out for several weeks. Look, man, I I used to be entertained by Mike Gundy being quirky and being mercurial. Now I think he's a coward. And yes, I just called him a coward. He is just spending so much time this week whining about how much money Oregon spent during the days from the collective with all this, like we've talked about, schools front loading payments when they were still allowed before the revenue sharing. Claims that Oregon has a $40 million budget for its players. There's no proof that it's 40 million. Oregon denies it, says it's significantly less than that. But that they do have players with NIL deals, and obviously they're spending the same 20 million on revenue sharing as everybody else. But it also makes it sound like you're just preparing everybody for the loss.
Yep.
You're laying out your excuse ahead of time, right? We can't compete with this. They have all this money and we don't. So what you're saying is we shouldn't be surprised when you get your rear ends kicked. That's what you're saying. And you're sending that message to your team. That may not be your intent. You're delivering the message to the media, trying to spin the outcome of the game before it's even played. But your team hears that. What are you doing, man? What are you doing? Um, it's just and you're gonna have to do it with Flores, who is talented. He's a good passer, doesn't have the running ability that the starting quarterback had, but he can throw the ball downfield. Oregon opened up against Montana State, not exactly a big test, but they won in a blowout and they got Dante Moore in there, their new star quarterback who committed to Oregon, flipped about a day or two before signing day a few years ago, signed with UCLA, which was a mystery as to why. Dante Moore is a pocket passer. He is a pro style quarterback, and Chip Kelly was not running a pro style offense. It was never going to work. I will tell you now that it's more than a year in the rear view mirror. Um, Dante's grandmother was DMing me during the process when he was unhappy at UCLA, and I don't engage with family members really because they tend to like what I write about their kids when things are going well, but as soon as their kid, the center, has a horrible snap on a critical play, all of a sudden they don't like what I'm writing. So, I tend not to get into the back and forth with parents. But Moore had a good game, 18 of 23 passing, 200 and some odd, 213, 14 yards, three touchdowns. So they also had 250 yards rushing. So they had a good balanced offense. Um, they look really strong out of the gate. Um, but Dan Lanning felt the need to answer a question about what Gundy said. And I want to make sure I've got the quote correct. I've got a ton of respect for Coach Gundy. Ultimately, how blessed are we to be in a place that is invested in winning? If you want to be a top 10 in college football, you better be invested in winning. We spend to win. Some people save to have an excuse for why they don't win. Um, and look, Oregon's got Nike money. They got Phil Knight money. Guess what? Lots of schools have money. Michigan has a quarterback because Larry Ellison from Oracle bought them one through the collective. This is the way it is, man. And, Gundy's out making excuses, and I got no time for it, man. I mean, you beat Tennessee Martin by 20 points. That's nice. But now you got a real game against a real team. And Oregon would be a real team with or without whatever it is they really spent.
Exactly.
The credible sources say it's closer to 30 million, which is the 20 million revenue sharing plus 10 million worth of NIL deals for their players. It's fine. That's the way the system works now. You can like it or don't, but that's the way the system is. You can get in and play, or you can sit it out.
To me, Gundy's assertions fall flat on his face because his team plays in a stadium named after their biggest benefactor ever.
They play in T. Boone Pickens Stadium, for goodness sake. The football program has facilities built from oil money. You're
Yep.
absolutely right. Oregon's going to blow the doors off them, by the way. The game's at Autzen Stadium in
Yeah.
Eugene. Oregon's going to blow the doors off of them,
I see a three-score victory here.
at least. At least.
Now this game here, this one here kind of interests me. We have UVA, which is the University of
Mm-hmm.
Virginia, and NC State.
Mm-hmm.
Cam Ross, the wide receiver from Virginia, he had a 100-yard kickoff, and I think he had 124
Yep.
yards receiving.
Yep.
Exciting. This
Yes.
might be one of those times for UVA where they possibly could pull an upset.
UVA has been very patient with Tony Elliott, the head coach who was the offensive coordinator at Clemson for years, because UVA has had a lot to overcome. They had the on-campus shooting, and they've had a lot of things to get through. I think this is the year of no more patience. Now, I don't know how good Virginia is. I think they have the capability of finishing in the top 10 in the conference. I don't know if they actually get there. I know in the polling of the media, there was not a lot of faith in them. I think they were picked to finish 14th or 15th, somewhere around there. But I'm not sold on NC State. So I think early on in the season, the pickings are there. NC State beat East Carolina 24-17 in the opener and did not look impressive in doing it because this is not a very good East Carolina team. Now, UVA beat up on Coastal Carolina, and this is not a good Coastal Carolina team. They've been good in the past. That ain't it now. What I liked about UVA, and you talked about the receiver and so on, what I liked about UVA was the defense. Defense held the Chanticleers, sorry, to 254 yards total and only 91 rushing. It was a really good defense. So we're going to see. I think NC State is vulnerable. The game is at NC State, and I will tell you it is a rabid fan base in Raleigh. They are all in on NC State football. It's why people have asked me if Dave Dorn is in trouble if he has a bad year. And no, I don't think he is. I think he's got a lot of leeway left, unless he has a total meltdown and goes 4-8 or something like that. It's a very patient fan base that really likes Dave Dorn there. Strange thing too is, by the way, it is Virginia against NC State. It is a non-conference game. I know that sounds weird, but this does not count in the conference standings. This is something that they shoved together because there were schedule changes. One of them was scheduled to play Appalachian State, and the other was scheduled to play Louisiana Tech. Both of those schools had to make changes and bailed out of their matchup with Virginia and with NC State. So these two were available, so they just patched it together. So it's two ACC schools playing in a non-conference game, which is rather bizarre, but I get how it works. I think NC State is vulnerable. I think they've got quarterback issues. I think they've got issues on offense. And so we'll see. Look, this is a chance. Again, they've been really patient with Tony Elliott. This is your time. This can be the game that makes your season, even though it's only week two, because this can be the building block for the rest of the season. Not that you played well and lost or you gave it a good try. No, man. You go in, you beat NC State, you are the new headline in the ACC the next week.
And I think that something tells me because of I think the NC State quarterback is Chandler Morris,
Correct.
and he just I don't know, just there's something missing there.
Chad Morris's kid, by the way.
That explains a lot. I just see UVA possibly coming away with a slight one. Now, the Cyhawk Trophy, you got
Yeah,
Iowa and Iowa State.
sure.
In years past, when I grew up, it was Iowa just demolishing the Cyclones
Hmm.
every year. Even when they had Troy Davis, who ran for 2,000 yards like
Hmm.
85 times, and Darren Davis ran for 2,000 yards, didn't matter. They had Seneca Wallace, didn't matter.
Hmm.
Times have changed.
They have. Iowa State has caught up in terms of a comparison between the two programs. And certainly part of that is Iowa State has offense where in recent years Iowa has not, right? We've seen a lot of changes in the Iowa coaching staff out of necessity. Iowa has a quarterback now. They've got Mark Gronowski. Um, and he was fine last week. They played Albany. I think, again, we're looking at a coaching staff that really didn't turn him loose. They won 34-7. They didn't have to ask a lot out of him. So it was an easy win where the running game picked up over 300 yards and it was fine. You're also not giving your opponent much game film to look at that is, viable, especially with the new offensive staff. Um, the Iowa State, they had their win over Kansas State in Ireland, and then they beat South Dakota, so that was pretty easy. But I'm going to tell you, I think the difference in this game is Rocco Becht, the Iowa State quarterback. I'm on board. I'm on board with Rocco Becht. 68% thrower, 5 touchdowns already, nearly 500 yards passing in the 2 games. Um, so I think both of them are playing with a better offense than what they have in the past. This isn't going to be a high scoring game. This isn't going to be Baylor and SMU by any stretch. This game is going to be won in the 20s. Um, but it makes a big deal that Iowa State is now much more competitive than, like you said, than it used to be. Iowa State made it to the conference championship game last year. Didn't win it, obviously. By the way, do you know, you may have looked it up, but do you know the last time Iowa State actually won the conference championship?
Mm. See, they were bad forever.
Bad forever is a good clue.
I would guess the 50s.
No, that's way too current. Let me put it to you this way. The Titanic was still in the water.
Oh Lord,
And I'm not talking
1912.
about the movie with Leo DiCaprio. I am talking the actual ship had not yet sunk. 1912. The
1912.
same year that the Titanic did sink. It was the Missouri Valley Intercollegiate Association Conference Championship that year. That conference eventually became the Big Eight, but that was the last time Iowa State has won a conference championship. And you and I talked about before the season, Big 12 is wide, wide open this year. So that possibility is there. Rocco Becht is going to have to play really well. He's going to have to play really well on Saturday, but I think Iowa State can win this.
I do too, and I think that because of the the ironclad nature of his contract. This loss is going to hurt Iowa, but it's not going to hurt enough to, change perception about Kurt Ferentz and his lack
Oh
of
no,
offense. It's just
no,
it's
no, no.
it's just they're going up against their in-state rival who actually is good for once. So it's just
Sure.
and it won't be an upset.
No, it won't be. And I think that there is a perception of this game, right? Like you talked about for years, it was Iowa. The Hayden Fry years, it was Iowa by a lot. Iowa State is a real legitimate conference contender now. Iowa is not contending. They have an improved offense. I really believe their offense is it can't get much worse than what it was, right? When Ferentz's son was running the offense. I mean, as I'm prone to saying with my staff, he can't fall off the floor. Once things are down there, there is only up. Um, but it's so the Iowa offense is going to be better, but let's not pretend that they're a Big Ten title contender, that they're that good right now. Like I said, this game gets won some with both teams scoring somewhere in the 20s.
I can see that. I can definitely see it. Now, lastly, we have Oklahoma and Michigan. Now,
Hmm.
Dave Portnoy, who is just a person who exists on TV, apparently, said that after his performance, Bryce Underwood reminded him a combination of, are you ready for this? Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, and Randall Cunningham. First, let me parse this once. Underwood had -5 yards rushing, so
Yep.
that eliminates Randall.
Yep.
Second of all, Tom Brady lives on, or existed on the fact that he had touch at all three levels.
Yep.
That eliminates Tom.
Yep.
Patrick Mahomes is good at improvisation. That eliminates just they played New Mexico. Coach Eck, know him, nice guy, just came down from University
Yep.
University of Idaho, I think. Came
Right.
down. It was a money game for the program. Can't knock
Yes,
it.
it was a paycheck game.
And they didn't get embarrassed. It was I think with 34-17.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And this makes me interested. I'm interested to know your thoughts on John Mateer. Came to Oklahoma
Hmm.
from Washington State. His offense coordinator is also with him now from
Hmm.
he actually came down from Pullman.
Hmm.
Does Oklahoma have, not saying a slight advantage, but what do you think the odds of winning this game are?
I think they're good. I think it matters that it's at Oklahoma. I think that matters significantly. Mateer was 30 of 37 last week for just shy of 400 yards and a few touchdowns. I think he had a rushing touchdown also. I don't have his stats in front of me, but I think he had a rushing touchdown also. Mateer makes big plays downfield, and I think that that makes a big difference for Oklahoma. Um, it's look, Bryce Underwood had a good game. He's a freshman. He's a true freshman playing in his first game. His completion percentage was good. It was 21 of 31. So it was good. I don't the rushing stats on a quarterback, I always take with a grain of salt because I hate college football statistic rules that sacks count against a quarterback's rushing stats. I hate it. There should be the sack stats and the rushing stats, and they should be separate. Quarterback is always, you're gonna have. We always report them as his net yards. They indicate that that includes the sacks that he took. Um, and he played fine. Look, I mean, um, Michigan last year, we know didn't have a good passing offense. They only had two games where the quarterback threw for 200 plus yards the entire season. So this was good. He threw for 250 some odd yards, and that's fine. But again, it was New Mexico. It was a paycheck game. Mateer is a better quarterback right now. Today, he's a better quarterback. Not saying, I realize Underwood was the prize recruit. Well, Mateer was the prize in the transfer portal. He was the most sought after in the portal. Um, So I think Oklahoma's got a slight edge on offense. I think that, and in time, I have no doubt Bryce Underwood is going to be all that. But today, I think Mateer is a better quarterback.
See,
And so look, I think Oklahoma has a very good chance to beat them. You know, I don't want to hear what Portnoy has to say one way or the other. Um, I think that you go into a packed stadium, in a place like Oklahoma. Brett Venables is under a lot of heat, understandably so. And you understand that Underwood is incredibly talented, but you're going to understand if there's some freshman mistakes in a big game like that also. It's what happens. Um, he's lost one of his offensive linemen. Babalola is gone for the season, with an injury. So this matters already. So I think Oklahoma pulls this out. I think it's a close game, but I think they pull it out. It's nice that Sharon Moore will be there for Michigan. That since they self-imposed his suspension, he got to choose which games he was going to be suspended for. And he chose to coach this one because he played at Oklahoma. He's going back home. He's going back to his alma mater, and how nice for him. We usually don't get to choose our punishment when we are, found to have done something wrong. But apparently Sharon Moore does. So look, I think we're going to see some flashes from Underwood. I think we're going to see consistency from Mateer. And there's a big difference, and consistency usually beats flashes.
now you mentioned Sharon Moore. There's, I guess, a little buzz around the fact that the investigation might not be completely over yet as
Right.
far as certain aspects. And a while back, you said you still, or you thought at the time that Sharon Moore will ultimately take the fall for this. I still see it happening.
I do too. If Michigan has a poor to average or barely above average season, I don't think they're going to move on him if Michigan catches fire and wins the Big Ten. I
No.
really don't. But if they're 8-4 and it's just kind of a mediocre season with, we joked about Larry Ellison buying Bryce Underwood, but there's a great deal of truth to it. Larry Ellison is, I don't know, 120, 122 years old or whatever he is, the founder of Oracle. And his wife is in her 30s and a Michigan devotee and says, we need a new quarterback. And all of a sudden, there's all this money in the collective, pre new rules, and all this money in the collective, and they get Bryce Underwood. Um, but if they wind up, so there's a good future there with Underwood. But if they wind up 8-4 and Underwood is just, an average guy in his freshman year, and Moore is found to have more strikes against him in the NCAA investigation, sure, I can see him being the scapegoat.
One of the games that we didn't talk about, I kind of want to give a quick little hit on.
Mm-hmm.
Florida plays South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
South Florida has a quarterback named Byron Brown, quarterback,
Yep.
about 6'4", 230. The most unique running style for the simple fact that he looks for contact. He will
Right.
lower his shoulder and start
Yep.
wiping out defensive backs. He did that to Boise State about half a dozen times.
Yep.
Florida should win this game. I think the closer it is late, the worse it gets for Florida.
Oh, I agree. Florida, from a talent standpoint, it shouldn't be that close. But Florida has been under delivering for more than a year now. They got hot at the end of the season last year, and it saved Napier's job. Translating that into a next season usually doesn't work. As Chip Kelly used to always tell me, momentum doesn't mean anything from one year to the next. It's a clean slate. And so for Florida, it's what is Lagway doing now? What is Lagway, doing next week? And Napier's job is is on top of that. I like Brown at quarterback, and it's fun watching him lower his shoulder and create the contact. But man, you don't want your quarterback doing that. You really don't. There's not a lot of durability in the position if that's what you're going to be doing.
Exactly. And he's had an extensive injury history just in his past, and
Yep.
he just that's the way he runs, but he's gonna ultimately meet the wrong one. How can people interact with you on social media, and what's coming up on Last Word?
They can go to lastwordonsports.com and click on the college football link. They can go to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky. They can find me at Tony Bruin on Twitter and Blue Sky. Obviously, we've got a lot of big game previews. We have our new weekly Heisman poll that's out with all the writers casting their votes. And it's a weighted vote. So, number one gets 5 points, number two gets 4 points, etc. So you can see how I'm not going to give it away, but it published today, Wednesday. And also our bowl projections. I know how you love Kevin McGuffey's bowl projections.
Yes.
K-Mac put so much work into this and keeping tabs on everything. And so we have our first new bowl projections in the new season out there, and we will have those every week on Wednesdays at noon. So and then, like I said, the game previews, and looking forward to that exciting thriller for me of Wake Forest playing Western Carolina, playing the Catamounts, and we'll try and stay awake for that.
As always, Tone, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the AddDrop Podcast.
All right, man. Be well.